It's time for the Charlotte FC podcast. Well, welcome Devon, Kerr to the Charlotte FC podcast. Big game coming up this weekend, big match in Colorado. How are you feeling about covering this? What is your take on both of these teams going in at this point in the year?
Good question. Certainly there's a lot of hype, I guess is probably the right way to phrase it, around this Charlotte FC team. Rightfully so, given some of the performances that they've given out. But I think it's far from a finished product. And a very similar conversation about Colorado. You have two teams that are more than capable of dishing out goals, no question about that. But I think defensively, both managers would tell you that when you look at them, a lot of unforced errors that have gotten them into trouble. You know, you could look at Charlotte and the Inter Miami game, right? And where they created chances and unfortunately couldn't finish things off. And against the run of play in 10 men, they slipped up. But then also just absolutely battered a San Jose team that could pretty much put the ball anywhere they wanted to, except in the back of the net of that game, and have their own defensive troubles. Colorado's experienced the same kind of stuff. There's high-flying attackers that are capable on both sides of the ball. But just right now, the full finished product, although quality results, I think we're far from that conversation for both of these teams.
Now, do you feel like since Colorado just lost their last match, it was a 3-0 loss to Portland, do you feel like that was just totally uncharacteristic of them and you feel like they'll be back in form? So for people who are watching or watch that game, they're like, oh, that's not the Colorado we need to see?
Oh, it's certainly not the Colorado you want to see if you're a fan of MLS, right? Or certainly if you're a Rapids fan. What I would say about the loss to Portland is this, and I had Portland the week prior in the LA Galaxy game. Portland's attack was an absolute monster, and still is, that was waiting to be released. It's one of the best attacking teams in 2024. I get it. You
even
lose
without Evander?
Yeah, even without. No, seriously. DaCosta is quality, different profile of player. You lost some pieces in the midfield, and I get that. But with what they have at the 9, certainly on the wings, and the way that they like to open their game up, the fact that they were so poor early on, and certainly in the Galaxy game, you knew it was coming, truly. Now, consistency, if it's there or not, that's a whole nother conversation. To me, it amplified the defensive struggles that the Rapids have had to endure early on in the year. But it also quantified it to the extreme within that game. What do I mean by that? Colorado has had a little bit of trouble pressing up top. They have ideas on how they want to go about their business. And to be clear, pressing and pressure are two different things. Pressing up high and bringing the energy to try and chase things down, they haven't been consistent enough. So if Mihailovic comes, Cabral's got to follow. That hasn't always taken place. If Ava Navarro sits a little bit, you've got to sit with him, get condensed. They didn't do that. Anything that could have gone wrong defensively in that game did go wrong. Now, this team can still control the ball for sure. But what ends up happening is if the first line doesn't get it right, the midfield starts to get itself opened up, and then the back line starts scrambling. Keegan Rosenberry has switched from right back to left back. You've got Chidozie Awaziem that has come in. He's learning a different system. He came over from Cincinnati. He's accustomed to a 3. He's learning in the 4. And especially as high of a line as they want to play, he's not used to that. So there's a lot of things this team defensively is getting used to, and the inconsistency of their patterns and effectiveness really caused them trouble against Portland.
Yeah. Are you seeing, or do you imagine that they would play a high press against Charlotte? And Charlotte's kind of been known, especially the last match, that high press, but I think Dean actually explained it more in that it was because they were kind of man-to-man and not playing a different way was what allowed them to beat that high press. Do you feel like Charlotte kind of understands when teams are doing that and can just send it over top?
Certainly so. I would make the argument that the best that you've seen this Charlotte team attacking this year has been in those transitional moments where it's been a bit more direct, maybe to a fault at times, where they know they have the ability to hit the release button. And especially with Patrick Achiman coming back from the national team, what a piece that is in terms of an asset to have the ability to just ping it, let him get on the end of it, let him chase it down. It resets your entire defensive shape, move yourself up. I think they recognize those points. I was talking to Dean Smith earlier today, and the idea that has been attacking wise their bread and butter is quality. The problem is that's what not what this team is predicated upon. This team needs to make sure that it has the ball a little bit more effectively. Why? Because you control both sides of it, right? If you have the ability to move your opponent, especially against this Colorado Rapids team, you have the ability to move them to shapeshift, which Charlotte is very good attacking wise. If things go awry, defensively, you're set up. Sure, long ball up over the top, you chase, you score goals, that's great. If it doesn't work out that way, and Colorado themselves are very good in transition, it stretches your overall shape. So the ability to move in perfect synchronicity one way to the other needs to be a little bit more frequent for this Charlotte team. But I do expect pressure from Colorado. They are not going to change. They haven't changed under Chris Armas at all. I mentioned consistency or lack thereof. Certainly they're chasing that a little bit. To me, it's more so bringing their groupings together. I've liked some things out of the front line. I've liked some things out of the midfield three, especially when they pop out and start to press in the wide areas a little bit. Certainly more to be desired off the back line, but even at all of them at their best, I've never really seen every single unit working together, which has been their main Achilles heel so far this year.
And do you think that's also just a case of just new players coming in? You've played, like, how long does it take for all these new pieces to really dive in and kind of have those relationships so that they know what each other is doing instinctively?
Referencing Colorado Rapids or Charlotte moving forward?
I mean, just any team in general, because looking at that, new pieces make it difficult.
Reps, man. It's always reps, and people from afar think they're pros, they get paid to do this, and while certainly that burden it does ring true a little bit, I'd also be quick to remind people that if you take any regular day job, and I'm not being disrespectful in those comments, but if you take a CPA, if you take a manager of a sales team, there are habits that people form within those relationships. Those habits can create success, but it also helps you to understand where people's faults are, right? So you can work on those types of things. If you're looking at a footballing unit, I can say, okay, look at the Colorado Rapids back line. I mentioned Keegan Rosenberry moving over. A right-sided player as a defender, your natural tendency when a ball comes to you, you want to be able to open yourself up so that you can see the game. Your head's always scanning. But on the right side, you're pushing yourself towards the sideline to be able to open and see things. If you're now on the left, you have to fight that natural tendency. Because if you open the same direction, you're back in towards the middle of the field. So the natural progression as it comes back across is to fight it and come the other direction. That doesn't happen right away. Keegan Rosenberry, a player that likes to push high. He likes to get involved in the attack. I've seen a lot of his movements as meandering at times that has gotten them into trouble a little bit. That's going to come with time. Same type of conversation for Charlotte overall, right? Every single opponent that they've come up against so far has tried to push them in. They've tried to get aggressive, whether for the majority of the game or intermittently. And Charlotte has found ways to be successful. What's going to end up happening is teams will sit. And they're going to make Ashley Westwood start to control the game, which he's so good at, moving side to side. They're going to make Brant Bronico be more aggressive to push up high, not in transitional moments, but 30 yards from the opponent's goal. And that just comes with experience. I look at both of these teams and I see teams that are certainly going to be playoff bound. There's no question about that. The real question is going to be, how high of a level can they reach in the regular season? And we also live in the era, Nick, where people are looking around going 5 games in, 7 if you're the Rapids in all competitions, right, with CONCACAF Champions Cup. And, well, this is wrong and that is right. And it's like, okay, slow down. It's the end of March, right? Like
we're 30 games.
Yeah, we are a far cry from where these teams are going to be and also what they're going to experience that will continue to make that evolution take another step as the year goes on.
Yeah, definitely. All right, I want to talk about a couple of players, just kind of your thoughts, especially looking from a national media. You don't necessarily watch them and listen to them and talk about them each day, but let's talk about Toklamati first.
Yeah.
Got his first start, but everybody has seen him kind of creep in the times that he has been out on the pitch that knew something special was going to happen, and he actually made the most of it. Even though he didn't get the goal last match, he was really heavily involved in all 4 of them.
I would say that he was clean, very, very clean. And for a manager in Dean Smith that has no problem playing young players, let's get that out of the way, right? Like guys that have, whether it's young based upon age, Andrew Privet, or guys based upon inexperience within this league, he'll lean on them. Given the opportunity, I remember them talking about him last year and his speed and just trying to find the patterns within, at that point in time of the year for Charlotte, was much more possession based, certainly compared to what the beginning of this season has been. And they said that he struggled with it. I didn't see that at all in this match, right? I thought that he was good in the pocket, playing with his back to goal. And when the opportunity came for him where he could stretch the game, certainly get into the diagonals to open up the back line and then open up space underneath for the midfield and wingers to work into, I thought he did a fantastic job. One thing that, to note for young players like Idon Toklamati is, if you get a manager that gives you confidence when you have to step outside of your comfort zone, that's a speed player. That's a guy who likes to work in the channels in behind. If you get the opportunity to do that and say, listen, I need you to play a little bit differently, the player then understanding the simplification of the process is what creates positive results. What I mean by that is, don't reinvent the wheel. Okay, this is what your job is. When you come in, simple ball in behind. Simple balls into Brant Bronico. If Ashley Westwood steps over, play that 15-yard ball that starts to spread the midfield out in front of you. That's going to allow the back post runner Wilfred Zaha to streak in. That's going to allow Zaha to come in the underlap. And then all of a sudden, you're getting the overlap from what was, in my opinion, a brilliant performance by Doumbia. So all these little things start to add up. And for me, I thought he was incredible. I thought it was a beautiful performance by him, and certainly something to give Dean Smith something to think about on the weekend. Don't necessarily think that that's going to be a starting role at this point in time, but it's nice to have that luxury if you're the manager.
Oh yeah, he's been waiting for the day to have that luxury for all of his positions to be
Yeah.
like, all right, who's looking good? Who am I feeling it? Because he definitely doesn't listen to anybody else. He's just concentrating on his players and how they do. All right, so now you have Privet gone because of the red, so that kind of changes your back line a little bit. You just had Solomon, who came in off of just being in the States after getting his visa stuff handled for 24 hours, playing a full 90, getting assists, having some nice runs moving forward. And then you bring Tim Ream back in, who from what we hear is feeling a little bit under the weather, but looks like he's still going to be a part of that. How does that change for a team? I know you can swap players in and out, but like, how will that change for this back line?
Well, I would say number one, important for MLS and Charlotte fans to recognize that the Tim Ream Suleiman Doumbia relationship was already there. While certainly the papers hadn't come through for the freshman to be involved, he had been in training. So the tendencies that I referenced earlier of what those players are capable of, that's already been established. All due respect to Andrew Privet, Tim Ream at the center back position is certainly the better option at this point in time right now. And if you look at what the relationship would be on that left-hand side, you include Zaha into it. It's a cheat code, first of all, when you get it right. Doumbia is very aggressive, certainly way more so than what you're going to get out of Tim Ream, more ground coverage. That can also come with defensive issues. Not saying that happened in the last game, but as he pushes the tempo more and you create the ability for Dean Smith to create that balance with both attackers, Burn on the right, Doumbia on the left, that's more space to cover. Tim Ream can do that. I would also say that before that release happens, and it depends on where the possession is taking place on the field, Tim Ream is great at his distribution. He can play that simplistic 5-yard ball in tandem with your outside left back. He's also great in patterns of switching play. Malanda is excellent at that as well. Now you've got that complement from both center backs. And what that does for the opposition is you're nervous as a player as to where that threat is going to come from. If I'm playing on the right side as a midfielder and Doumbia is coming at me, I have to be careful that he's not streaking in behind. But if he makes a quick little shimmy and then drops back, well, now his speed has got me in trouble because I'm weary over the ball over behind, but now Doumbia has just set me up. He's created a little bit of space for himself. He's got his own pocket that Ream can play into. That's the benefit that you get out of Tim Ream coming into this back line. I think it gives you better balance overall. And certainly with the possessional capability that we saw last year, a little bit lackluster at the beginning of the season, though not all Charlotte's fault. It's the circumstance of which the game was given to them. This gives you that level of comfort that you need with Tim Ream coming back in and Doumbia on that left-hand side.
And so we already talked a little bit about Tokomani, and of course Pat Ajiman and how he's been playing with the national teams. Definitely got more confidence. Do you see, or do you perceive in knowing players that do that? Do they just kind of keep escalating from that?
You would certainly hope so. Pat's an interesting one. Sharing a lot of mutual friends and certainly plenty of time outside of the game together, covering him in college. Pat is a hard worker. He just wants to play football, man. That's what he wants to do. And when you get a person who, and I mean this in the best of ways, when you get a person who is removed from all of the white noise outside and all they care about are the comforts that are provided to them within the beautiful game, that can create something special. And I think for Pat, he is certainly sitting on a ton of confidence right now. He's willing to absorb any knowledge that is passed to him. And I'm not just talking about Dean Smith, willingness to work off of set pieces. If you look at what's underneath him, there's so much knowledge. I'm a big fan here of Ashley Westwood, and Ashley Westwood seeing so much. He passes all of that information that he's gained over the years with his time in England onto every single position. Your movement could be here. It probably should be there. And he's a sponge, man. So to get someone who's willing to work, A, physically, B, mentally dialed in to the organization in that position, and then C, you're picking up goals. I'm not really sure, especially at such a young age, I'm not really sure if you're a manager, what else you could ask out of a player like that. And hopefully that consistent climb that we've seen really since last fall continues to follow.
Nice. All right. One last player here to talk about, Pep Biel.
Yeah.
What differences have you seen this year as opposed to last year, besides knowingly that he's playing more of a 10 position than he did last year? I think, in my opinion, I feel like that's allowed his creativity to come through, and also not his reliance on having to defend as much. Even though he does come back and defend, it's not like a requirement if he's out on the right or the left.
Yeah. So I would say, first thing, the best quote that I've heard over the past 10 days is Dean Smith referencing how Pep Biel is not 100%. Dear Lord, yeah. If that man hits 100%, watch out. We are all in trouble, right? I mean, the guy he's quality right now. I would say that percentage that coach is referencing certainly leans on his conditioning. And for a guy that he dealt with a little bit of injury in preseason, so they had to nurse him back to it, load management within games, especially when you're in that 10 spot that you reference. And there's a lot of patterns within there in the midfield three that gives him freedom for sure, but he's still got a lot of ground coverage to work off of the way that they try and move forward. That's not an easy thing to handle. So right. I would say that the percentage points probably lean a little bit more on the fitness side. As far as what we've been able to see out of Pep Biel at the beginning of the season, his timing seems a lot better. You talked about how not operating on either flank, specifically the right-hand side, that he was used a little bit more down the stretch last year.
Right.
Defensively, the coverage is there. I mentioned earlier how it looks with the addition of Tim Ream coming onto the back line, right? And the balance that you get, both attacking and defending, from Doumbia on the left and Nathan Byrne on the right. If they're given more freedom in the attack, recognize that also resets the defensive line higher. As you push, space closes down. Whomever was on the right then would have more freedom to go explore going forward. Now, we've seen that from Zaha on the left, and certainly we've seen it from Kerwin Vargas on the right. That just means Pep Biel, his only job, which is still a big load to carry, is to create. That wasn't the case last year. He was the one who was sitting in front of that back line, who was having more transitional moments, defensively having to track back. If the shape got twisted, he'd have to drop in and help out. When he's basically given the license to go and attack at will, that's why you see a player in Pep Biel who certainly the conditioning is going to follow, but his confidence on the ball, really good link-up play with Ashley Westwood that was already pre-established last year. And again, you got a striker up top who's willing to work. I think the interesting one for me that's going to be able to unlock even more, you can see frustration by Wilfried Zaha. And I think it's fair. He's not on the same patterns right now as everybody else in Charlotte. I don't think they all are. But as soon as Wilfried Zaha continues to get himself more up to speed, and more importantly, when everybody else on that field recognizes what that gentleman is capable of, they say the streets will never forget is kind of the thing about Wilfried Zaha. He could legitimately turn this league upside down. So that frequency and reps that I talk about for all of these guys, Pep Biel finding Zaha, that's a scary thought of what the future could be, man.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So before we go, last things, what are keys? What will we see to know that Charlotte is going to win this? And what will we see out of Colorado to know that, oh, Colorado is going to take this, like the way that they're playing, that's kind of demanding or forcing the play?
What we've seen out of Colorado overall is a little bit of everything, meaning they can control a game, they can press up high, they can sit deep, and they can suffer. The latter portion we've seen a little bit less of. If I'm this Charlotte team, I'm looking to be a little bit more ball dominant, not just because Dean Smith wants that to be part of their identity, but the players that Charlotte have overall in the 11 grouping, goalkeeper included, with the ball at their feet, to me seems stronger in possession than Colorado. If you allow the game to open up a little bit, both teams have shown that they're vulnerable in those moments.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like defensively, if it opens up more, it is going to benefit Charlotte, but that comes down to control. Your ability to sit a little bit deeper, draw Colorado in, and then playing behind. The back line has struggled in transition a lot. If you're Colorado Rapids, it's that consistency I talked about, bringing all the lines together. You want to let that front line go. You want Georgi Mihailovic to help out Rafa Navarro, that's fine. You got to make sure that you have the third musketeer and Cabral coming in, that midfield three coming up from behind, and the back four that communicates. They've really struggled in communication. If those balls go up over the top and the units gets segmented, they're going to have some trouble on the night.
Nice. Well, thanks a lot, Devon Kerr. Devon Kerr on the match analyst for the MLS match this weekend with Colorado and Charlotte, 4:30 Eastern, 2:30 Mountain. I hope you enjoy the match.
Appreciate you, buddy. By the way, before I go, just got to let you guys know, this might be my favorite jersey that I've ever seen in the history of this league. Tell you, man, this thing is a piece of work. I didn't want to show favoritism by wearing it on the pod and get myself into trouble, but I figured if I pulled it from the back and just showed everybody, show a little love to the Charlotte fans.
Oh, yeah.
Love the city. Always love being there. And you guys are fun. So thank you so much for having me on, and best of luck. I said at night, obviously afternoon game. So
yeah, and don't be a stranger when you get the chance to come to our city.
100%. All the best, buddy. Cheers.
All right, take care.
See you.
Again, thanks for listening to another episode of the Charlotte FC podcast, where we bring you the fascinating people who work for and around Charlotte FC and the world of football. The Charlotte FC podcast is edited and produced by me, Nick Finelli, and Eli Finelli. Please help us out and share this episode with others. 5 stars, and follow CLTFC Podcast on Instagram, X, and YouTube. Until next time, enjoy the day.